issues that they may be experiencing and things of that nature. From what I heard this morning, that is already the case in a lot of places. So continue to think with that frame, continue to use that perspective as you move forward. And ultimately, justice means fixing the system and offering equal access to those tools and opportunities. So if you look at the justice picture, the individuals there have the same size ladder. Justice is actually a prerequisite for equality. You can give people the same size solution when the system itself is being fixed. And love talking about this because there's a lot of words that are used interchangeably, and they shouldn't be. So if there's something that you leave with today, know that there's a big difference between equality and equity. And I love hearing the things that we've heard already this morning. And I'll just read from the slide. Equity means treating people with fairness and impartiality, considers individual needs of people. Context is key there. Here's just a chart that follows up with the picture, and I'll just read the middle line. So equality involves treating each person in the same manner, irrespective of their differences. Equity involves treating each person according to their needs. What do you need to be served well in this moment? And then ultimately, justice involves treating each person in a manner that makes things right. So all of this is, this is heavy lifting. This is continual work. This is day by day, day in and day out. Things are being done. This is not just a one-stop shop. Oh, I did this, so we're cool. I checked this box. No, this is constant. This is continual. Intersectionality. I'll touch on this topic. This is another one of my favorite things to talk about. Intersectionality. Just the meeting places of our many identities. Here in the slide, you see different identities that can overlap and intersect. And here I look at life like a two-sided coin. There's things about all of us that could point us toward advantage in certain situations. And there's also things about us that could point us toward discrimination and oppression. And what I want you to do is kind of think about these things for yourself, but then think about things for those that you serve. What does this look like for the people that you serve? What kind of experiences do they have in relation to intersectionality? And so intersectionality, the way that Kimberly Crenshaw wrote it is a concept that deals with how our multiple identities come together and intersect and create this snowball of discrimination for us. So for me, I show up in the world as a Black man that lives in North Carolina. And there's been times in my life that it's been fine. And there's been times in my life that hasn't. And that's just me being honest with you. And so there, my race and gender have pointed me toward discrimination in certain ways. Or it could be my race, gender, and social class. Not rich. I want to be. Maybe one day. It's coming. And then there's other identifiers. There's other identifiers that come about, and this is not an exhaustive list, but people's age, their religion, immigration status, biological identification, gender identification, sexual orientation, education, all of these things can be a part of someone's identity that may point them toward discrimination or oppression or something like that. What this does is it makes me an advocate for people, and I want to appreciate their experience so that I serve them well, and I make sure that they're in a good position to be served well by others. I have a friend that she recently told me she took her aunt and uncle out for dinner, and they're up in age, and she said, you never would have thought it would be that difficult to get around a restaurant, but both of them had walkers and things like that. And so now she'll take that into consideration from here on out as far as, okay, which restaurants do I really go to? Because this one wasn't really friendly to folks that have a different ability status. Also, I have friends, part of me working across difference. I am actively connecting with males that have a different sexuality than me. I grew up in the world as a heterosexual cisgender man. But I also work across difference and work across, with people that have different sexual orientation or gender identification, because I'm building bridges there, because it's not something that I had actively done in the past. And I know what heteronormative privilege looks like. I know what, being a person that identifies as a man, I know what that privilege looks like. So in the matter of intersectionality, I just sort of keep in mind all the different ways people can be discriminated against. And there's many, many ways, so I haven't gotten it all together, but I just have an appreciation of, what it feels like to be discriminated against. And so I want to be an advocate for others and help them to avoid that, because once again, this impacts our nervous system. It impacts the stress levels that we have, which impacts the hormone levels that we have in our body and things like that. Also, well, it's a great place for resilience involves. So I'm gonna take you back to those questions that we talked about before. What or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times? Anybody want to shout something out? And my other thing during this talk, this can be a conversation. So feel free to raise your hand and say, hey, Kevin, that's stupid. This is why. This is what I think.
First one's an easy one, my son.
I'm sorry?
My son, that's an easy on the who uplifts you.
Awesome. Tell me about your son. What's his name?
Lucas.
Lucas. How old is Lucas?
4.5.
4.5. All right. So tell me about Lucas' personality. Woo.
What's that?
4.5. That's
yeah.
That's
he doesn't like to take naps, so that's kind of a downer. No.
But
no, he's a very active kid, and just every day after I get off work and see him, it kind of lights up my day, and gives me the strength that keeps you going nowadays. And as I get a little older.
That's awesome. Tell me some of the things that you like to do with Lucas.
He likes to take walks with him, ride his bike, take him to the park, let him swing. Yesterday we were at outside the station washing our police cars.
That's awesome.
He actually liked doing that, so.
That is awesome. I want you to notice Chief's smile, his laugh, his speech pattern change, things like that, because he's talking about something that he loves. And that is a great tool. We call it resourcing. So Lucas is a resource for you. And know that Lucas isn't here right now, but it's still having that same effect on him, that smile, that laugh. And so identify some of the resources that you have in your life so that when you have that tough moment at work, you can bring that resource to mind and you can enjoy the benefits of just thinking about that resource, what you like to do. What does it sound like when you're with your resource? What does it look like? What other things kind of take place? Anyone else? What or who uplifts you? What or who gives you strength? What or who helps you get through hard times?
Coming from love and being loved.
One more time.
Coming from love in everything that I do.
Ooh.
And being loved.
Coming from love and being loved. Yes, that is very uplifting. When you say being loved, who loves you?
I love myself.
That's
But
a
if
great
if you don't know anything about love and I distinguish that distinction, I want you to live with the experience of love.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only way that I can be loved.
Thank you so much. And we're doing the same thing. I want you to have that experience of love, just like Chief had that experience of resourcing. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll tell you, I do believe that the common understanding that in hard times you need to be patient and allow things to play out. Some of us, I just leave it in God's hand. I become vulnerable to that, and I think that gives me that sense of everything's going to be okay. Just give it a second, and it always does. So that's to me, it's a powerful me time that I enjoy, and I have learned to cultivate as time goes by. Not to be too quick to react, but rather just take a step back and kind of see the process unfolding. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Personally, that's one of the hardest things for me to do. I don't know if everyone heard him saying that, in tough times, just sitting back and let the process unfold. And he said he leaves it in God's hands and being patient, all of that. Yes, I applaud you. I try, but I feel like, I need to be doing something. But no, that's exactly right. And just notice that, when you get to that point where you say, I'm going to sit back and let this unfold, and you may have a sense of peace, or you may sense the weight leaving your body, or that stress or tension. That's important. That's really important. So thank you for that. And all of this brings brings me to this point in that we all have the access to the language of our biology and a framework to help understand the human experience. Even when things go wrong, we like to talk about things going right all the time. Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing well. We're not always doing well, but we have this framework within our body, and we just saw it. We saw it play out with some of the comments that we had to help us understand the human experience. And what I'm talking to you about today is how do we help make our human experience just a little bit better, even when things are hard, even when we are trying to do work across difference, even when we are dealing with hard issues like equity, diversity, and inclusion, even when we are trying to solve problems, even when people don't want to talk to us and that trust hasn't yet been established and things like that. We can help, use some of these skills to bring ourselves into balance so that we can remain solution focused and doing the work that needs to be done. So normally, I would tell people about these guiding thoughts that we have, but today I'm going to focus really on the last two points. What I do is generally share the skills of the community resiliency model so that wellness skills can be cultivated in communities for children and adults. And we're doing some of that already with this group. In addition to that, we want to promote compassionate dialogue, continuous learning, and reflection. Compassionate dialogue, there's an exchange taking place. Continuous learning, it is not one-sided. It does not have the power differential or I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to talk at you, you are going to receive all the information I'm giving you, and you're going to be better because I have talked to you. So it's going to be continuous learning from both parties. And then reflection. That reflection piece is huge. So compassionate dialogue, continuous learning, and reflection. Are you speaking, engaging with the communities, the people that you want to, that you need to build the bridges? Are you learning from them as much as they are learning from you? And are you reflecting on the things that are taking place? Are you reflecting on the learning? Are you reflecting from the experiences? How are you becoming better? How are you becoming different in these situations? I'm going to take another quick turn and talk about implicit bias. We all have it. Please don't let's debate later. I promise. I will stand over in the corner. We can talk about whether or not people have implicit bias or not. Implicit bias, we have it. And these are just the attitudes, stereotypes, understanding the actions, decision that impact our decisions in an unconscious manner. That's the thing about implicit bias that I want people to know and understand. It's unconscious. Unconscious. And this is from the Caring Institute at Ohio State. These are activated involuntarily without individual's awareness or intentional control. It's activated involuntarily. Now, fast forward to the end, what can we do about implicit bias? You can use your external information and knowledge to check your implicit bias. You can. Tell you a quick story. There's a lady named Verna A. Myers. I think she's a lawyer by trade, and now she's one of the C-suite people at Netflix. She's like their chief diversity person, but does great. She has a lot of great books out and things like that. I like her because she's highly transparent in her work, and she talks about a lot of the mistakes that she makes. And this is a person that works in the field of equity, diversity, and inclusion. She is a person, if you give her a t-shirt, it's going to have something like that on it. She talks about flying across the country all the time and doing work around diversity. She would consult with corporations and firms and things like that about how to make their processes, their situations better. So she's taking a flight one day and she realizes that there's a female pilot. She feels some solidarity. Oh, it's a female pilot. It's great. So they're on the plane. She's on her trip. They hit a pocket of turbulence or something. She's like, oh man, I hope she can handle this plane. Well, they get to the destination safe and all that. She does the work that she does. And then she gets back on the return flight. She's coming home. Male pilot this time. She's used to seeing male pilots. Not a big thing. They hit a pocket of turbulence, and then it hits her like a ton of bricks. She's got implicit bias toward female pilots because when the male pilot hit the pocket of turbulence, at no point did she say, oh, I hope he can handle this plane. But with the female pilot, it's, oh, I hope she can handle this. And this is a person that does this work. She's in this field. She's out here. She's a soldier. She's great. She's waving this flag, but she has implicit bias. But what she does is that she checks her implicit bias, and she says, okay, pilots are tasked with thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of training, flights, flight simulation, things like that. Of course, she can handle the plane. Her training necessitates the fact that she can handle the plane. But what is it about me that's the first thing that I thought? I need to check that now and into the future. And if this is a person that does this work day in and day out, I'm gonna give you a Kevinism. Ain't nobody special. None of us are special or exempt from our implicit bias. What we need to do is still show up the best version of ourselves, or the best parts of ourselves, so that we don't go out and intentionally or unintentionally make a mistake that can damage all of the great work that has been done so far. More words that are used interchangeably and should not be. Bias, we just talked about that really quick. Prejudice, you prejudge somebody. Oh, you're wearing a shirt that has this on it. Or no, you're wearing a shirt that has this on it. You are this type of person. Prejudice. Bias and prejudice are largely inactive. It's kind of things we keep to ourselves, or we may even say it out loud, but it's largely inactive. Discrimination is when you may take your bias and prejudice and you exclude people. Oh, you're a microphone stand. No, you can't play with me. Discrimination is active. Racism, you kind of bundle all those things up, point them toward a people group, add in social, political, economic power. That is racism. A lot of times prejudice and maybe discrimination are used in place of racism. Racism is a pointed and intentional thing. It involves social, political, and economic power, and it is aimed at people groups. The Nuremberg laws that preceded the Holocaust, racism. Jim Crow laws, racism. There's lots of different examples throughout history that show the no racism, but they all have the social, political, economic power behind them. So, words with Kevin. So going back to the story of the Bernard A. Myers, the bias, and some of these behaviors can change and be unlearned. We just got to work at this. We've got to be intentional about it. There has to be some consistency involved. Are you willing, able, and prepared to check your own thinking over and over and over? That's the type of consistency that is going to take to continually move the needle and create some of this change that we really want to see, to continue building those bridges. And my community resiliency model skills, they help me to monitor where I am, because there's a skill we call tracking. It's just noticing what's happening on the inside of your body. And I notice where I am. I notice if I'm getting upset, because my body gives me signals when I'm getting upset. It helps me notice when I'm really happy and things like that. Going back to being upset, when I get upset, I physically get hot. My muscles tense up. And it's like my body's preparing me to fight. And so I know that, okay, there might be a point where I need to kind of disengage from a conversation or an experience because something's going wrong. So, but I use my skills to help monitor my behavior so that I can show up in conversation, show up in engagement, so that I'm not going to my high zone and becoming spiteful and selfish and trying to be the smart kid in class and things like that. That I'm showing up as the best version of myself from the best parts of myself. All right, another resiliency ball. So, what or who is helping you get through this right now? It's like, oh my gosh, well, this guy stop talking. Second question I love, how can we work together to help? A lot of that is happening in Haley right now. That question is being answered over and over again. How can we work together to help? I love that. Continue using that though. Don't let it stop with what you have going on now. And even folks that are from outside communities, who can you work with to help build the bridges? At other times, what have you done to get through? What have you done to get through tough times before? We're nearing the end. I love this James Baldwin quote, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And I love the fact there's lots of things being faced here in this community. What else needs to be added to that list? If you are from another area, from another community, and you are not yet facing the things that need to be faced, this is my charge. This is my task to you today. Identify those things that need to be faced. And then who else needs to come with you along that journey? Who can be your stakeholders? Who can jump in and ride with you as you are doing the work, as you are building the bridges? Lastly, our compassion cannot be limited only to those who look like us or who share our citizenship or religion. It must be extended to encompass everyone on the basis of our common humanity. And this is a quote from the Dalai Lama, and I absolutely love it. This is how you go from otherness to us. Start with common humanity. You're a human being just like me. You deserve to be loved, served, and cared for in a certain way. And I love being able to do that for others, regardless to what they look like, where they come from, what their life experience has been. And I hope the same for all of you. And I think that's it. So any questions? In 10 minutes early, too. Yes. Questions, comments, concerns? Yes?
Not a question, but to share the experience when, like the mirroring, I guess is what I was feeling, when the others, the people who shared their experience and what brings them joy, I could feel that joy, like it evoked it in me. I could feel the space. I set aside the space for that feeling inside of me, and I feel like that is something that will continue to help us grow when we experience these things and recognize that sometimes our behaviors, we can mirror them.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want them to be mirrored in a good way, we should be projecting that.
Yes. You said a lot there. There's a concept with our model. It's called mirror neurons. It's actually not, it's scientific. But to your point, that's a real thing. I was experiencing so much joy as others spoke about their resources, about the things that help them get through hard times, things like that. And I can even have different resources. I can have different things that uplift me or give me strength. But hearing someone else talk about things that give them strength is uplifting to me as well. So just know that you have things in your life. There's things that you may be able to share. There's things that you may be able to tell someone else about that may uplift them. It may be key to helping you build that bridge or to establish that connection. Going somewhere and asking someone, what brings you joy? And I'll tell you, it's a little trick that I use, like opening up my presentations with this, and kind of makes the crowd kind of in your favor. Even if they don't tell you, you get people thinking about what or who uplifts you, what or who gives you strength, what or who helps you get through hard times. For me, I've got 2 daughters. They're amazing. I got one that's 16, bless me. She's gonna start driving soon. She went to the prom. Yes, it was just all the fields. There's a lot going on. I had coordination with my buddies, and we were like, at all times, there would be eyes on the teenagers.
Boyfriend.
Oh my God, I'm not we'll call them that yet, but yeah, it's a lot going on there. I've got a 16-year-old and I've got an 8-year-old. It's like having 2 only children, but they light up my life. And you can't get me talking about them, and you see my smile. I've got chills going on, and identify those things that you have in your life. And as you're serving folks, it's okay to say, hey, tell me something that makes you smile or laugh today. Or, as you get to know them more, you start to learn what their resources are. You start to learn what those things are that bring them joy. Ask them about them. Get people talking about the things that they love and enjoy. And if they talk about it with you, that establishes some connection there. You will be less of a stranger. Things of that nature. Any other questions? Comments? I don't have to stand up here either. I can come down and sit. We can yell across the auditorium.
I don't know if it's my question is, how do you get people with different viewpoints together in the same place to discuss it? I know it works. Political, economic, race, all this diverse. How do you get them together? How do you get them to show up together?
That's the hard part. Getting people to come, keeping them there, keeping them engaged. That's where people like me come in. I can do that, but getting people to come. I think one way is just to be really transparent about what you're doing. Like, hey, this is what we're going to discuss, and being transparent about the fact that, hey, this may get uncomfortable, but We're going to take some resiliency pauses. We're going to make sure everybody's good. We're going to make sure that our nervous systems are brought into balance. Last summer, we did a 6-week pilot. Laura, you were in the pilot, right? Were you in the pilot? We did a 6-week pilot around equity, diversity, and inclusion, whereas folks gave up their Saturdays for 90-minute sessions to talk about all things equity, diversity, and inclusion. I mean, we talked about everything, all the heavy topics we talked about. There was times that people disagreed and things like that, but we had a safer environment. I won't say it was safe, it was a safer environment where people felt like they could share, not be judged. They could share, even if someone else disagreed with them, it was a safer environment where they weren't going to be attacked. And just creating those types of places where, like I opened up with, people don't have these conversations because of how it makes them feel on the inside. It's not necessarily that you and I don't agree, it's how it makes me feel that you and I don't agree when we put our cards on the table. That dysregulation is what we've got to bring into balance so that people can engage. That's from my slides. We call that resilience zone dialogue. And remember, I showed you that slide of the resilience zone. It's not a perfect place of zen and peace. You could be a little bit angry, frustrated, things like that, but you're still able to engage from the best parts of yourself. And things don't turn into shouting matches and people are trying to prove that they're the smart king of us. Yes?
Because you're doing your work, right? Trauma and resilience. How do you support individuals to take responsibility for their own feelings? Because you're mentioning that it's hard, people don't talk because they may feel uncomfortable. Nobody can make you feel uncomfortable. So you didn't break my heart, you broke my expectations. So how do you work with people? Because if you don't take responsibility of your own feeling, your own life, nothing's going to happen. And on the other hand, what about stopping calling people out and just start calling people in? You know, so just to lower a little bit of that anxiety that provokes just talking about these topics.
No, I think, and I'll answer your last question first. I think the calling people in piece is huge. And that's why this presentation is titled what it is, going from otherness to us. You want to open the doors. And the piece that we end on, the common humanity, that's also calling people in. Hey, we are commonly human. We all have nervous systems, things like that. And that opens the door to people, and we can start there. Just identifying that starting point brings people in. And to your first question, that's where, for us, the skills of the community resiliency model come into play. Because after you learn the skills, I can apply them as needed for my own nervous system. And it's less about, what something says or does to prompt a reaction in me. And it's more about how can I handle myself in this moment, knowing that I have my well-being, my nervous system, my resilience zone. I have control of that. I have agency around, my resilience zone basically. And so I can apply the skills, once I sense myself, drifting, and coming out of my resilience zone, I can apply a skill or two to make sure I bring my nervous system into balance. That's why I wish I had lots of time to talk to you today about the skill. But please use the app. The app is a great starting point. And then there's others around this room that have been through community resiliency model training. We do it with anyone from any sector, any walk of life, things like that. This model is for everyone. If you've got a nervous system, the community resiliency model is for you.
Can I just promote that we're going to have some workshops in June?
You sure can.
Well, in our community, so there's an incredible amount of people that have already been trained and that are teachers. So, yeah, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Comments, concerns? It's been a pleasure to be here with you this morning, especially hearing about the work that you are doing. Because you are already well on your way to going from others to us in this community. And so I applaud you. And thank you very much once again.
Just want to say thank you to Mr. McLeod for coming down and giving us that amazing presentation. Next, I'm going to have my director come in, and she's going to talk a little bit, and then we're going to go on a quick break before our workshops.
So such an amazing speaker. We've never heard him before, although he was highly recommended. And the last comment that someone made on this side, how do we get people to come together to have conversations? Just want to say that this is a really good example. You being here today sends a really strong message back out into our communities. I want you to know that as we started inviting everyone to this conference, we got a couple of departments that responded and said to me, please don't invite me again. So this is the type of, just you being here sends a very strong message out. Because we do, we're willing to work with anyone. I work with legislators all the time. And if you know anything about our politics in Idaho, you would know that not everyone is so welcoming of me when I reach out to them. So I'm used to getting that type of response, but it is disappointing. It's disappointing that this is not a standing room, that we don't have more of you here. But we really reached out to everyone statewide. And like I said, a couple of departments said to me, please don't invite me again. And we'll make sure that they're off of our radar. But on the other hand, how do I'm gonna really try to make an effort to reach out and go in person to meet with them, because they really need to understand that the communication goes both ways. We can talk to our communities of color all we want, but it needs to go both ways. With that said, I want to acknowledge our title sponsors and our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't be hosting this conference today. Both Chief England and Mr. Herbert Romero were the key reasons why we're here in Haiti today. They were very instrumental in bringing this conference to you here locally. And our title sponsor, the crisis hotline, Ms. Tammy here, I just want you to know she's got some injuries herself that she's experiencing, and even with that, she's here with us. She was the first one, the very first meeting we had, she said, I want to be the title sponsor. She didn't even hesitate. And because of her, yes. And we give thank you to all of our other sponsors that are listed. Again, everyone has been very generous and very hospitable in welcoming us to Blaine County. So thank you for that. If you look there's a number of exhibitors out in the hall. We're going to announce them here in a little bit, but I want you to look at your programs. On your name badges, you have Team A, Team B, Team C. If you look at your agenda, you'll see where those workshops are. You are allowed to have your coffee and your snacks in there, in those rooms. So please feel free to go back out. We have a lot more snacks out there for you. Grab something before you head over